This episode of ChatGPD was made possible by the hard work and creativity of our production team. A huge thank you to Chris Sang, Alakia Chandran, and Shakoyak Forazan for their expert production, editing, and behind-the-scenes magic that brings each conversation to life. We also want to thank Saratoga and the IMS for their support in helping us share ideas, stories, and resources that empower our grad students at every stage of their journey. Hello and welcome to another episode of ChatGPD, our podcast on careers in biomedical sciences. I'm Pamela Plant and I'm the Director of Graduate Professional Development here at the IMS. And today I'm joined by our guest, Dr. Taejun Yi, who is the Scientific Director at the Krembil Foundation. Welcome, Taejun.
Thank you for having me.
So TJ, tell us about your current role, because there are some grad students who might not be familiar with research foundations. What does the Krembil Foundation do? What is their mission?
For sure.
And how does your role of scientific director contribute to their mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So Krembil Foundation is a private foundation. So it's started by the Krembil family, and their mission is to support basic research, specifically in neuroscience. And within neuroscience, they really want to support Alzheimer's disease. And on top of that, we do have a smaller pillar known as arthritis and autoimmunity. And within that pillar, the anchoring theme is the psoriatic arthritis, so PSA. So they really value basic research. They think that within the basic research, discoveries can be made that could have long-term impact, and they really want to support scientists within that realm. And my job as a scientific director is try my best to bring up new and upcoming research that's exciting and novel to the board members so that they can vote and make sure that everything is approved to be a scientifically grounded projects that the foundation can really put their support behind.
Thank you. And can I ask, what is exciting you most about your role right now? Is there some aspect of your research that you're funding that excites you most? And as a follow-up to that, really, what kind of major problems are you working on in the Alzheimer's context?
Yeah, so the first thing when it comes to exciting parts of my job, I think is being always up to date on new literature. So I think the hardest part is I'm not a scientist at the moment anymore, right? So with PhD, I learned how to do science. I get to learn the value of science and learn to appreciate science. I'm no longer doing the research myself, but I still have to be involved within the field. I want to know what's going on in Alzheimer's research. I want to know where the direction of the field is heading to so that we can actually be proactive in reaching out to the scientists and asking, hey, what are the biggest questions that's being asked in Alzheimer's disease and how can our foundation help to support that? So that's the most exciting part, the continual learning process. If there's new technique, I think we all know one of the hot techniques right now is a spatial transcriptomics. So how is spatial transcriptomics being used in Alzheimer's disease compared to other diseases? What's actually new? What has been done before? So being up to those current scientific events is what really excites me and resonates me, and that's what thing I really value when it comes to my job. And I think the second part when it comes to difficult questions, I think for us, especially my position in the foundation, we view scientists as partners. So I think there's partners usually means both ways, right? So we support their science, but we also want to hear their thoughts and get feedback from them as well. And to maintain that partnership I think, is the key in addressing the difficult questions. So again, scientists are the ones that are pioneering the discovery. They know the field field the best. So my job is to kind of ask them, what's the biggest question that you want to answer? What's the biggest question that the field can answer to advance science within that realm? So not only Alzheimer's disease, but even with PSA. So this morning, I just had a meeting with Psoriatic Arthritis Disease Research Program Group here at the Toronto Western Hospital, and was able to discuss with the directors and how their research is shaping the field and how their research can be translated within the patient population. So all these questions are, I think, some of them are very difficult when you think about the question rooted from basic scientific perspective, but I think also trying to highlight how they can be beneficial to patients in a translational manner, I think is also very big questions, because although the foundation supports basic research, the reason for us doing that is hoping that one day the discovery that can be made that can really make an impact in clinical practice.
So I really want to understand the funding model of the foundation, but before we do that, I want to rewind for you.
Absolutely.
And go back to when you were a grad student
Okay. Quite
and
a while.
looking out into the bright landscape of your future. What were you thinking then? What were you envisioning for yourself?
Right.
And what are the steps that you took and that led you to where you are today?
So I don't think it was that bright at that time when I was thinking about my grad school. So I was kind of torn and not realizing what I really wanted to do. I had a really supportive PI. He's actually part of IMS, Dr. Rupert Call. So he has been very supportive. So after my defense, he asked me if I want to stay and tie up the loose ends. And I said, absolutely. More publication can't hurt. So I stayed there for another year. Year comes by. He asked, do you want to stay and continue to do some research? And I was like, I feel like I need to take a step back and figure out what I wanted to do because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And there are a couple fellow students who knew exactly what they wanted to do. And I think most of them became medical science liaisons, so MSLs, and they did very good as in they starting from grad school, they knew what they wanted, they knew which company they wanted to work because they really networked and did very well in that regard. And here I was thinking, I don't know what I wanted to do. What can I do? So that's how I started when it comes to towards the end of my grad school. And I thought, what can I do and how can I make the best of this opportunity that I have, which is I have nothing to do. So Toronto is an expensive city. And what I did was I needed a job to sustain myself. I remember walking into Indigo, the one at Eaton Center, looking for a person who looked like a manager to ask if they had a part-time position that came up. So I just literally needed to sustain myself. So I walked into Indigo, said, are you guys hiring? And they did. And then from then on, I realized my passion for interacting with people. And that's what really kicked off my career and figuring out different things. So I worked at startup companies. I worked as a part-time assistant professor here at the University of Toronto and also as a small biotech company. And then now being able to talk with scientists, I think really craving that intellectual stimulation. I think that's what I really strive for, and also being able to form partnerships. So what started off as complete indecisiveness and uncertainty and kind of working and knocking door on Indigo kind of really kickstarted my career a little bit. So I think that was a little bit of a spark moment that I didn't know. And hindsight 2020, now it makes sense. At the time, I was very uncertain about my future.
Yeah, but good for you for just realizing you got to do something.
Yeah.
So you started, it says a lot about who you are by the fact that you will go in, you will just, find work. Period. You don't necessarily have to find the perfect thing. You just have to find something.
I think being open-minded, I think that helped a lot for sure.
And when you kind of pivoted, okay, so you were at Indigo part-time, you were continuing to look within the sphere of, something more related to your PhD, so, pharma work, etc. What was that transition like? Like, was there any skepticism of your employers saying, why are you working in Indigo? Or was it met with understanding that, of course,
No,
this is a good thing that you're just getting out there and you're working?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think, if anything, I think I had personally more doubts than the externals had of my scientific, I think, not pedigree per se, but the break that I had. So to give perspective, I worked at Indigo for 3 years. So there's a full 3-year gap between my PhD and then starting back into the lab. So if you think about that, that's when it comes to research career, that's a prime career for scientific discovery or scientific enhancement of your knowledge, because right after PhD, postdoc usually lasts 3 years, right? So I basically missed that opportunity. So towards the end of my Indigo career, I thought I want to go back to science, and I thought exactly what you're asking. Am I already so far behind when it comes to this? Thankfully, a position came up, and I was able to work in Dr. Shannon Dunn's lab, and I was able to play my strengths a little bit in a sense that I knew the techniques that I learned from PhD would translate 100% well, because again, you do so many specific techniques during your PhD, it becomes second nature to you. However, even if I went back to the same field, 3 years is a long gap. So if I start in a new field, then there's no real disadvantage of having that 3-year gap. So I knew if I can support in what I was good at the time was flow cytometry, ELISpot, writing REBs, and also being able to recruit human participants. Thankfully, Shannon was looking for a person to work with human samples. It was a mostly mouse-driven lab, and she was looking for a person who can lead the human studies, looking for ELISpots, looking for flow cytometry. Multiple sclerosis is something that I've never studied before. My field was in HIV and herpes simplex virus too. So therefore, no matter what career stage I was at, I was going to be disadvantaged for that anyways. But my strength played still very well. And even in this, when I was having interview with Shannon, she valued the people to people interaction that I learned, people skills basically from Indigo. So it kind of played to a strength a little bit. So I think I had to kind of pick and choose my battles. Luckily, lucked out that she was looking for an individual that catered to my strengths. So I think, however, she didn't value too much of the gap as an issue as much as I thought it was an issue. So I think sometimes you just become a little harder on yourself, and your perceive the way you perceive about yourself may not be exactly how others may perceive. Because there was a time I was like, should I include Indigo in my LinkedIn and all
Yeah.
these things? But then I think it helped at the end to do that.
Yeah, and it's knowing how to articulate those transferable
Absolutely,
skills
yeah.
that you develop and you are continuing to develop in that role. And it's not, it would have been worse if you did nothing for 3 years. So
Right.
you were doing
Yes.
something,
Yeah.
you were growing. When you pivoted from Indigo, did you have a mental map of where you were going and the steps that you wanted to take to get there? Like foundation work was probably not on your radar at this point.
Yeah.
Was academics on your radar? Or
Yeah.
would you just knew that science was your superpower? You wanted to go back into the scientific
Right.
world, and then you would just kind of play it by ear?
Yeah.
Or you described the people that had that linear vision. And it sounds like you were the opposite, where
Yeah.
you just kind of let opportunities come to you,
Right.
as opposed to having a very definitive vision of where you were
Yeah.
going. So could you talk about maybe that transition
Sure.
period from coming to the lab to where you are now?
Absolutely. So I think, yeah, moving from lab to Indigo was a complete 180, right? So I think for better or for worse, when you're in a grad school, you're kind of very protected. You're surrounding yourself with other PhD students who are very academically driven. And when I went to Indigo, I was surrounded by people who actually live in a very different manner, in a sense that they were really grounded. They really enjoy what they were doing. And I kind of got to feel that a little bit back too. So rather than just chasing after papers, chasing after academia, I was able to kind of take a breather and say, what do I enjoy? What do I want to do? And I really enjoy the people aspect of it. So meeting people, helping customers. Some people might think it's a chore. I genuinely enjoyed that for some bizarre reason as it may be, but I enjoyed it. And so and then, however, I feel like at a certain point, I realized I wanted the intellectual stimulation to be part of my career path. And then the only thing I knew was science. So I thought, how can I incorporate people and science together? So I started honing in a little bit. So if it was me removing myself from the lab was to be kind of completely open and kind of reset everything, I started to hone in one step at a time. The first step that I honed in was, what do I like to do? Let's start with that. So I like people interaction. I like to go back to science. And during my PhD, I thought about what did I enjoy the most, and it was presentations. So I thought I have to go back to academia to a certain degree. And Shannon, being a great mentor she was, she asked me, what do I want to do? I told her that. And she said, why don't you try start teaching some of the lectures that I have? I'm like, oh, that's great. I get to do presentation. I get to meet with students, the people part. And academically, I help with the postdoc situation. So it really hit with that. And that's when I started honing in. And every iteration of the job, I was kind of changing. I was like, what did I like? What are my strengths? What did I not like? So I kind of hone in as time went by. And I think I finally landed in a place where I feel very comfortable that I want to work for a very long time and have my career as in the nonprofit world.
Congratulations on
Thank you.
finding your place.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that in your current role, obviously your strong research foundation and your technical knowledge would serve you incredibly well in this role, and as would your people skills and your ability to communicate. What are some of the other transferable skills that you use on a daily basis that you might not have recognized
Yeah.
immediately that you were developing in grad school, but that you draw on in this current role of yours?
It's a very good question. And I think two things that really come to mind. The first one is due diligence. I think Due diligence when you're in your PhD comes in the form of, have you read these papers? Do I know my background? When it's troubleshooting, did I exhaust all my options before realizing that this essay may not be the best one for this experiment? So all these due diligence, I think due diligence, there's levels to it, as in how much a person do their due diligence. And I think that is such a practical thing no matter which job you're in. You're going to be given a question, you're going to be given a task, and the level of due diligence you provide can really distinguish you between another colleague of yours. So I think that's something that I didn't really know I was developing during my PhD, but hindsight 2020, I think it makes sense now. The other one is self-awareness. I think the biggest shock for self-awareness for me came during my first committee meeting. So I didn't understand why all the people who are in upper years are telling me you have to be comfortable saying I don't know. I think in undergrad you're taught to know everything, right? And whereas in grad school you're taught to know your limitations. I think those are the biggest difference you can kind of make. And being able to be comfortable saying I don't know took a while, and that also came with a self-awareness that I will never know everything, and I got to be comfortable with myself not knowing, because that's the first step in kind of getting to the next stage of knowing more. And I think those two are what really helped me to, after leaving academia, kind of hone in. So what's my stage? Kind of figuring out where my self-awareness, using my self-awareness to kind of figure out where I'm at this moment, and then doing due diligence to figure out which way do I want to go. And in that scenario, did I exhaust all the options to kind of figure out, is this the right next step? So I think those two things not only help to guide my career path, but also any position that I had. I think those two really helped me to become, or at least attempted myself to be really try to be good at what I do. So I think those two are the transferable skills that you don't really recognize, but I think really helps a ton at the end of the day.
That's amazing. I love that perspective. And I think if you were thinking about yourself back then and just kind of exploring all these different worlds, what would you tell graduate students that are in that place right now? Other than what I'm hearing from you is really know yourself
Right.
and be very self-aware.
Yeah.
I love how you took inventory of what you like, what you're good at, and then just really kind of ideated.
Right.
Where can I exercise all of those things? But what other bits of advice would you give students that are in that position that you were in?
I think being open-minded, but not just passively, but more proactively being open-minded too. So I think you can approach open-minded as two things. So being passive would mean, oh, I'm open to do these things. But I think if you're proactive, which I think I lacked when I was in grad school, and that's why it took me a little longer to get to this stage. For instance, these ChatGPD ones, like if I'm more proactive, I will listen to all the other podcasts and figure out what everybody had to say about their position. That will really make me understand what their position is, and I'm also being proactive about being open-minded, rather than one thing will pop up in LinkedIn and I won't read it. So you're actually doing more proactiveness to being open-minded, and when an opportunity comes, no matter how unexpected it may be, I think try to take that into positive experience. So one of the things I did apply, which I didn't plan on applying in the part-time position throughout many part-time positions I had, was work as a consultant for Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. So that's my first exposure to nonprofit that I never thought I would have. But that's when I first realized that, oh, working on nonprofit is incredibly rewarding, which I want major aspect of my career to be part of that. So without the CZI, Chan Zuckerberg Initiative experience, I don't think I would have even sought out nonprofit as my final kind of career destination. So being open-minded and trying things that you may not really be comfortable with.
So let's talk about CZI, because how many people have that opportunity on their resume? It must have been incredibly exciting. How did that opportunity come about?
Yeah, so it was basically through an email through the Department of Immunology. So the Department of Immunology sent out an email saying, oh, Chan Zuckerberg Initiative is looking for these consultants who's in the biomedical field. I was like, okay, cool. I'm doing a postdoc and I feel like I can apply for this position. The position wasn't fully set in stone, but they knew what they wanted, and they had idea who they wanted, the target audience. So I applied for it. It was actually interesting because after my Indigo experience, I feel like I'm an advocate for Indigo at this point, but after Indigo experience, every job that I got, everybody asked about what was an Indigo, what did you do at Indigo? And it actually gives me a very good way to distinguish myself from other candidates, because I'm able to bring the people skill part. Because again, I kind of said that Indigo experience very different. And I meant in an extremely positive way because that allowed me to interact and really reset myself and learn about people skills, which I don't think you get when you're in the academic fences, right? So yeah, you get to talk with other scientists, but you don't get to talk with other people who are not in the field. Which I think there's a very varying degrees of people skill required to kind of connect with that if you're in the scientific field. So being able to use that as a leverage, I think helped me a ton. I think that's what they valued when it comes to hiring me for CZI. And yeah, I actually keep in touch with some of the people who hired me at that time, and they actually mentioned that that was a big selling point because at the end, when you're a postdoc, PhD level, looking for a part-time position, everybody's so similar and most people can do their position. Sometimes the plus alpha, what little thing can you bring to the team that you may not be, people may not be able to? And thankfully that spun in a positive way for me. So I think that's one of the things that helped me a lot.
Yeah, I think it shows a lot of tangential thinking because I think a lot of the pedigree of typically what you find in biomedical students is they are following that pseudo academic, pseudo
Right.
medical CV experience
Yeah.
kind of route, and it can be very linear. So what I see in you taking that pivot to Indigo is really a tangential thinker, which would be very attractive to CZI.
That's a very nice way for you
You
to
know,
say
like,
that. Yeah.
and I would love to learn more about your role as a consultant there. Like, what was that like?
Yeah.
That must have been a very exciting environment. What did you do
Yeah.
there? And why ultimately did you leave
Yeah.
and take another
For
opportunity?
sure. So I think I'll start with the last question first. Ultimately, I left because it was always going to be a part-time position. Um, what did I do there? So actually, this kind of goes back to a startup company started by a person from medical biophysics here in Toronto, Sam Molyneux. He started a company called Meta. I'm sure you guys can already connect the links a little bit. So Meta was actually a product that was supposed to be a Spotify for research papers. So basically, being able to kind of choose your cater the Meta platform to be the research that you do, and then they'll show you all the papers as soon as it comes out and put in your Meta inbox, and then you'll be able to. So it was a way to prevent you from getting scooped because you're always up to date on the papers. So that's what it was actually back then, and I helped to support the Meta program. So Meta was in its early stages. Again, it's not the current Meta form it's at. It's the Meta, the scientific platform. And in that sense, they wanted to curate specific platforms for scientists to be able to kind of look at it and say, if I'm doing neurodegeneration research, here's already a curated platform. And because of our background, there were quite a bit of us consultants, part-time consultants, who were both senior PhD students, postdocs, and our job was to curate these articles or almost like a playlist, right? So you're curating a playlist for scientists. So that's what we were doing. And depending on who the clients were, sometimes it would be Stanford, sometimes it would be local high school. So depending on who your clients were, you have to kind of cater to that. So that was my main job, was kind of looking at the client list and then kind of figure out what kind of platform would they like to have. So what kind of playlist can I curate for the scientists or other consumers in the meta world?
So how did that lead to CZI? Was that what CZI was funding at the
Oh, right.
time, or
Yeah. So CGI acquired Meta. So
okay?
CGI saw the benefit in this in a sense that they can make this free for the scientists in the world. So that's why they acquired the Meta platform. And my first position at Poppy is actually Poppy was a startup company. That's the founders were part of the Meta team. So that's how I made the connection. I was able to.
Yeah. So you get in that whole world, and then you just
Exactly.
look for
Yeah.
opportunities in that world.
Yeah, I think that's again one of the lucky or serendipitous part of kind of being open-minded, trying different things. And I did never expect that the connections I made when I was at CCI as a part-time position would lead me to a full-time position at a startup company at one point. So yeah.
And did you pivot from there to the Krembil, or what was the stage in between that
Yeah.
and the Krembil?
So I did the postdoc, and then the next job was the Poppy, the startup company. And so Chan Zuckerberg Initiative was during my postdoc stages. And then after the Poppy startup company, I moved to Lucid Psychoceuticals. And then I moved to the non-profit world of Krembil Foundation. The reason why I kind of left Poppy to Lucid Psychoceutical was Poppy initially was an almost like environmental monitoring company. So pathogen monitoring in the environment, especially during COVID time. So because my background was in ID, I thought it was very interesting. And just as many companies in startup world, they had to pivot and they pivoted to more of air flow management company, which was very exciting, but just wasn't for me. So I moved to what I knew, which was science, and Lucid Psychoceuticals were developing drugs for multiple sclerosis. My postdoc was in multiple sclerosis, kind of chased after what I was craving, what I was looking in a career. And then after many different positions, the reason why I moved from Lucid Psychoceutical to Krembil Foundation was looking for the passion that I had. I mean, I loved working for Lucid, as in working to kind of further the MS world and trying to see if there's if we can develop a therapeutics for it. But for me, I crave that nonprofit rewardness of the work that I do will benefit others in a non-financial way. So that's what I was looking for, and then that's why I decided to pivot to nonprofit at the end of the day.
Yeah, it sounds like a really strong pull for
I
you.
think so.
And
Yeah.
you realized that early on.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk about nonprofits and
Sure.
foundations
Yeah.
now, because Chan Zuckerberg is a very different landscape than Krembil.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we all know how Chan Zuckerberg is funded. How is Krembil funded? What does that funding structure look like? How stable is it?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
So the Krembil Foundation is philanthropy driven by the family. So the families are the ones who are making the donations. And my job as the foundation scientific director is to kind of act as a middle person to find a perfect match to bring the scientists to the Krembil Foundation board members. So I bring the project that aligns very well strategically with the Krembil Foundation, and then trying to make a partnership. So I almost act as a middle person to kind of advocate. To the scientists, I'm an advocate for them. And then for the board members and the Krembil Foundation, I'm the person who's looking for other projects. So I try to act as a middle person for that. It is very unique, I think, even compared to other foundation like MS Canada or even any other foundation. Most foundation, depending on which side you're on, nonprofit, they're trying to raise money and then they try to use that for either scientific endeavors or whether it's for patient-driven research. For us, it's the general donation from the Krembil family that they're looking to donate into the research world. So that's my position, a little bit different from regular nonprofit. But there are still similar positions like myself that exist in multiple Society of Canada. So I think they have a lot of research associate position that's kind of help with leading the research competition that they have, kind of organizing that. So there are different varying aspects of similar job that I have in other foundations, but for me specifically, I am here to help the foundation find the next big project.
Yeah, so they are your sole funders. You do not need to go out and find funding. This
No,
is
not in
funded in
this-
perpetuity.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, this might look different than other foundations
Yes, for sure.
where fundraising is very much a part of that job.
Yeah, and I think those are the things that I wasn't even sure about when I was coming in, right? So I think that's the whole point of trying different things. Once you get your foot in the door in one field, and then everything kind of makes sense. Everything opens up. So I always give if somebody asks me about a different position that's available in your field, I was like, even when it comes to retail, I didn't know how many jobs that's available in retail until I just started working in the world of retail, right? There are people who work overnight shifts and their job is to stock the shop when it's closed. All these things, operation leaders, like all these are terminologies that you're not familiar with. I wasn't familiar with until you get your foot in the door. And same with the nonprofit world. Until I came in here, I had no idea how big of a world it was and how supportive the environment was. So I think I'm still learning as I'm going. And I think that's a good mindset to have. But ultimately, it really attracts me the fact that nonprofit is really driven by more for passion and trying to help others rather than financially driven ones in certain cases.
So, what does success look like for you in your role?
Oh gosh, okay.
What are the metrics of success? Is it, publications of the scientists that you are funding
Yeah.
or impact? How do you measure your success?
So I'll answer that two parts if that's okay. So one is how I personally view success, which I think may not translate to every job or even within our foundation. But so we value high risk, high reward research, meaning that, research environment for funding environment has been so competitive lately. I think the sources are shrinking and therefore everybody's showing as much preliminary data showing that this research is recipe for success. We have shown this much preliminary data and we know this is going to work. And I think with that, the consequence is that the scientists rely on more for practicality rather than the dream or the spark. So when I went to Krembil Science Jam, Dr. Mark Reed, he was giving his story about how he became a scientist. He said when he was a kid, he had a little spark that kind of helps his imagination. And I think most scientists kind of yearn for that little spark in imagination. And I think the Krembil Foundation, our goal is to do high risk, high reward research, which means that they have the opportunity to have that spark of imagination again. So if I have to kind of indirectly measure my success, I think if I'm able to help the scientists to have that little bit of a spark back and able to have them do research that is less safe but more dream actually that's something they can dream about, I think that will be my measure of success personally. Now, unfortunately, the reality of the world is that it's mostly metric driven, and I think the world is very driven metrically. Again, academia, how many publications do you have? And even within publication, what impact factor is the journal that you published in? How many grants do you have? How much grants that you have?
How many
much
patents you have?
exactly?
How commercializable is your research?
Yeah, and I think that kind of gets thrown out the window when you're trying to measure impact of basic research. Because I think how do you measure a basic research? The impact of basic research is a question I think our foundation and our team, so Kate and Reese, who's my colleagues, and we've been trying to answer that. We consulted with Welcome Trust, some people there. I've discussed with CZI, I've discussed with people from Brain Canada, and it's hard. I don't think there's a right answer for it. I think, and that is partly because it's hard to quantify it. And, as scientists or people who are in the field of science, you want numbers, you want quantifiable data, and it's everything that you get is qualitative, right? So I'm going to stick with the easy answer being qualitative. And I think if I can and quantify it, how many scientists was I able to kind of spark that interest? And hopefully that will be my answer for how I can measure my impact. It's hard, I think.
It is hard, and it's all very subjective. But I like your answer. And for grad students who they might not even know foundations exist and that this is a potential job. I mean, it sounds like a fantastic job because for those people that are very driven by helping others, that might want to go into medicine but are not able to, and here is a very tangible way of taking your scientific knowledge and really leveraging it and implementing something that could potentially really help a lot of people.
Yeah.
For those students, how do you learn more about foundations? If you're not funded by a foundation or you don't have immediate exposure in your research institute
Yeah.
to foundations, what advice would you give to students to be involved in foundations? Do foundations take volunteers? Do they take grad student volunteers? How would they reach out? Do they go onto websites or Instagram sites? Or what advice could you give students that are wanting to scratch beyond the surface and learn a bit more about this world?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. And I think I didn't even know how big of a world it was until I kind of got involved in it, right? And as grad students, I think everybody takes pride in that they're able to come up with an answer. They're able to do their research. And I think just take those skills and apply it exactly within job searching or whatever, soul searching or whatever it may be. And I think even if it's uncomfortable, just reach out to people, right? So whether it's LinkedIn, just connect with people. There usually any job title that says research in it and a person belongs in a foundation, it's pretty similar to what you're studying for, right? You're studying research. They most likely have scientific background. You will strike a person that will be a nice fit for you to kind of discuss how you can go forward. And I think that's something that I also learned when I was taking the GPD course here at University of Toronto. Cold calling, cold emailing may not work, but when you're a student, I feel inclined to help students more than anything, right? Because I've been there, we've all been there, and I think job market's getting tougher out there. So I think reach out and I think do more research, and you'll see titles that you've never seen before. Take that and I guess reverse search it, right? And see who has these titles and just talk to them, coffee chat, and see what's out there. And one thing I did was so before I got this foundation job, but I knew that I want to kind of pivot to nonprofit. I kind of looked at the list of foundation, what's the largest foundation? And I think Globe and Mail had a list of foundation that's biggest when it comes to raising money, and I kind of narrowed it down some of those ones. Look, just randomly check their career website. What positions are there? What are the titles? Read their job description. Some of them were great. Some of them was like, oh, I don't think I'll be able to do that. But I think kind of gets you in the right direction of getting into nonprofit. So easy answer. Unfortunately, I don't think there is one, but I think once you kind of do your research, try your best to connect with people. And I think every field, everybody wants to help each other out, right? So I think that's especially strong within the nonprofit where people are driven mostly by passion. So I think hopefully they'll be able to reach out to the right people and connect with them.
What would you tell yourself looking at everything that you've done,
Yeah.
all the experiences you've had? It's so varied, so interesting.
Yeah.
What would you tell yourself back then? That
Yeah.
yeah, what would you tell yourself something that, would have helped? Would you have done something differently? Or what advice would you give yourself knowing everything that you know now?
For sure. I think it's something I mentioned, be a little more proactive and being open-minded. So I think I was very happy that I was an open-minded person, that I'm able to kind of, if something came by, I was like, oh, this is great, I'll try this. But I wasn't really proactive in a sense that I was, again, maybe that would have shortened my time to figure out what I wanted to do. So maybe, for instance, rather than leaving academia altogether, I would have started having more coffee chats, right? It's kind of being more open-minded, reaching out to people, listening to more podcasts, or at least look up what other positions are there before leaving it so blindly, right? So I'm glad it worked out at the end, but I think if I had to advise another person to go through a similar route, I don't think I would ever do that. So I would say, be more proactive. I took a gamble in leaving academia. Things aligned very well, and thankfully it worked out for me, but I don't think that's the way most people should go. Or even if I have to advise myself, I would try to not go the exact route that I went. But I think I could have achieved similar things, if not more, if I was more proactive in that sense. So I think learning from the past, I think that's what I would advise myself to be.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe you're thinking be more intentional
Yes,
in what, and I
you
guess
worded
that's
better,
something
yeah.
that we do kind of encourage our grad students to
Yeah.
just don't go through passively through grad school
Yeah.
and wait for opportunities to fall in your lap. You can be very intentional
Yeah, I
about
think
your
so.
searches and be curious. You're curious about your projects.
Yeah.
Be curious about yourself,
Absolutely.
learning about yourself, what you're all about,
Yeah.
what makes you tick, and be curious about what is out there that might fit you.
Yeah, I agree.
And be very intentional about speaking to people and looking for opportunities to
Yeah.
kind of go beyond that and find more information and trust your gut.
Yeah.
Like you'll know what feels right, what doesn't feel right.
Right.
This, your instincts as a researcher, you hone in graduate school
Yeah.
and you kind of trust your instincts. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, this line of interrogation in my
Right.
project feels right. And you learn to trust yourself. How is it any different than, applying that to yourself and your own career searches? And it sounds like you've really done that. I mean, I think you kind of diminish the intentionality of what you did, but you were always checking in with yourself and saying, does this fit? Does this align with who I am?
Yeah.
Does it feel right? And that is very intentional.
Yeah.
So
I think you nailed it when you said that I started pivoting a little bit. I think that's a really good word when I was like, oh yeah, I think looking back, I think you describe better than how I've described how like my career trajectory kind of changed. But yeah, being open-minded, being openness to pivoting, right? So I think realizing something doesn't mean that I'm just, again, kind of with passive proactive, and you said intentional, right? So once you learn something, be intentional and willing to make that change. And that all comes with the open-mindedness. I think you really nailed it in how I think I kind of went through my career trajectory.
yeah, and I look at you and I think, wow, bravo. Like every step of your journey, you took something that helped you get to the next stage. And you were able to articulate that and turn it into a plus as opposed to, just kind of, wading, bobbing in the waves. No, you actually were learning and you leveraged those experiences to where you got to, and you have a fulfilling career.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself going? Like, where do you go from here?
Yeah, that's a
You're
very
a
good
happy
point.
man. Like, what does growth look like for you? Where do you see yourself in like 5-10 years?
Yeah, that's a very good point and a very good question. So I think 5 to 10 years, I still want to be in this field for sure. For now, I really want to be with the Krembil Foundation. They've been very supportive. It's a place where, if you look at my resume, I've been in the foundation for just under 3 years now. This is the longest full-time job that I had. So other than the postdoc. So I think that speaks volumes. I know it's a short period of time, but for me, who was very indecisive or even almost uncertain, I think it really strikes to me that this is a place where I want to be. And my goal, hopefully fit by 5 to 10 years, my goal is that I can say I helped to support this research that made a big impact. And I think for me, this is the perfect job where I get to blend my intellectual curiosity also with being able to be practical and helping the scientists, but eventually, hopefully, their discovery that can lead to bigger change. So I'm hoping that within 5 to 10 years, maybe we can measure better about the impact that we discussed, right? So maybe the impact can be a little more tangible than what I've been able to kind of achieve within the last 2, 3 years. So I really want to see how my passion and the work that I do can make a little bit of more tangible impact through the foundation's guidance and through through all the work that the scientists will be able to conduct through the work that I do.
And do you focus on Canadian research or do you have an international presence?
So we are currently funding Canadian researchers. It's not that we don't want to fund international researchers. We saw the opportunity and we seized on the supporting Canadian scientists. We are currently somewhat seeking international researchers as well. And I think we're trying to broaden our reach to better science, not really to kind of I shouldn't say I'm limiting myself to Canada per se, but I think there are great researchers in Canada, but there are also great researchers in other parts of the world. I just know Canadian funding environment the best. I was raised in Canada. I did my studies here, so it made sense to kind of start within Canada. Krembil Foundation has always supported a lot of Toronto and Canada. And I thought with our team has been slowly expanding a little bit. And now we're also thinking, can we also reach out to international as well? So we're in the process of doing that. And so we'll have to kind of revisit and see if this a strategic move is the right way or not. But we're kind of trying to support international slowly.
Yeah, and with your experience with Chan Zuckerberg, like that is a global philanthropic unit.
For
So
sure.
clearly there is a model, and with your exposure to that model, maybe you can apply that to Krembil, and we'll have you back in 5 years to see
That'd be great, yeah.
the world domination in the field of neuroscience research. So we've come to the end of our time, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you, TJ, and I'm just wondering if you would be so kind as to play along here.
Yeah, for sure.
We, at the end of each podcast, in 1 minute, we ask our guests to kind of pitch their career. So pitch the career of foundation work in 1 minute, the highs, the lows, everything in between.
For sure.
Anytime you're ready.
Okay. 1 minute to pitch what I do. Okay.
1 minute.
For sure.
Not a second more.
So I think if you're looking for something that's rewarding, but that's also able to satisfy your intellectual curiosity, I think those two are the biggest home run when it comes to my position. I get to interact with scientists, world-leading scientists, to discuss about their research, but I also have the opportunity to kind of talk about their dreams. And I think that's a very rare position for me to be in. Being able to talk to world leader scientists, talk about their scientific dreams and how it can potentially impact the world. And also with this Krembil Foundation behind my back and them supporting the research, I have the opportunity to do something that's very rewarding. So I think if you want an intellectually driven curiosity, but also you want something that's rewarding, I think something along the lines of nonprofit research focused position might be one for you.
Dr. Taejun Lee, thank you so much for being with us today. Your passion is very evident, and really enjoyed learning from you today.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.